All right, everyone. Welcome to the Genius Mindset. I am Angelica. I'm a success strategist. I'm so excited for this podcast because it gives people the opportunity to share their genius mindset with our guests. So, first today we have Aeoliana, and she's going to share a little bit with us about herself and tell us about who she is. So, Aeoliana, I will give you the floor to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thank you for having me, Angelica. And like you said, I'm Aeoliana. I live in Florida and I'm a mom, I'm a wife, and I was a paralegal for over 20 years. And now in my free time, I am a podcast launch strategist. And basically, what I do is I help podcasters um, with the strategies they need to go from what I like to call frazzled to dazzled.
I love it. I love it. Um, so I've done a few podcasts and prior, but they were more forensic based, so it was a little
Mhm.
different. This is a spin. What would you say, I guess, for what would be your tips for those that are starting out and they're kind of like brand new, like just jumping in there? What are some prerequisites that our guests can like kind of put in their pocket for what you should do before launching a
Sure.
podcast?
So make sure that you have an idea of what you want to talk about and not just like a broad idea. Make sure, like, write down at least 52 topics. You may not get to all of them, but at least have 52 topics in your pocket that you can talk to for at least 20 minutes without getting tired. Um, Make sure that you have the right goals set up for your podcast. And by the right goals, I mean goals that are specific to you, your business, your topic, your podcast. What a lot of podcasters do when they start out is they look at these podcasts that have been out for years and they try to model their podcast based on that on their podcast. That's not going to
Yes,
work. Yeah, that's not
yes.
going to work. The
I see that
majority of
all the time.
podcasts yeah, absolutely. The majority of podcasts out there um are solo. They're being done by one person. So that means one person is recording, editing, producing, um marketing, promoting, all of the things. If you try to look at a podcast, like my husband likes Rich Eisen, sorry. He likes Rich Eisen, which is a sports podcast. But the guy has
Yes,
like a whole team of people. He
right,
has a whole
right.
so like you can't compete with that. So make sure that your goals are specific to your podcast. You're doing it solo. Make sure that your goals are like, hey, my goal this month with this podcast is just to get 2 episodes out this month. Fantastic. It's just
Okay.
to, keep it simple. Try to keep it
Yes.
simple at the beginning. Another tip is batch. So whether that's recording your episodes in batches or editing in batches or publishing in batches, scheduling ahead of time. Try to
Yes.
do try to do every activity together. That way your brain doesn't have to switch gears and you waste that time. So if you do everything at once, it makes it a little bit easier. And then
Yes.
last, don't worry about the tech. Don't worry about getting the most expensive mic, the most expensive headphones. You can edit every single podcast, whether you have a Mac, bleh, whether you have a Mac or a PC, you can edit for free.
Right.
Mics aren't that expensive. You can get a good mic on Amazon for like 50, $70. Headphones, it's just to get the outside noise out and focus on what you're saying. So at the beginning, you don't need to spend all the money on the equipment. If you want to later on, sure, but don't let that stop you from getting your podcast out there and your voice out into the audio waves.
Which I think is great because a lot of times we get overwhelmed. We start Googling and we start looking at all the stuff we need, and it just gets overwhelming. Like, oh my goodness, I have to go get all these materials. I have to go get all
Right.
these supplies. How am I going to make this work?
Right.
And I think one of the other things is like when you're in a field that's so saturated, how do you make a show you? Because I've seen a lot of podcasts on the crime side, right?
Mhm.
That's where I started. And
Yeah.
it's so oversaturated. Like everybody's sharing the same stories. They're just telling them in a different way. And it's just
Mhm.
like, how many times can you hear these same, stories before individuals start finding some other interest or some other area to go and, start listening to?
Yeah.
When you're in a field that is completely saturated with like-minded individuals or podcasters, is there a way to make it your own, or should you really be looking for different ideas on the outside, I guess, of that saturated field?
That's a good question. I think for me, what I tell my clients is stay true to who you are. Stay true to your voice, what you're sharing. Because like you said, there's a ton of different things that we hear all the time. And
Yes.
like I'll take your example that you said you were listening to a lot of different things the same way, being told the same way. But did they
Mhm.
all resonate with you the same way, or did each one resonate differently?
Each one resonated differently, depending on how it was, because some have,
Right,
two people, some have one person, some is just
right,
like a voice reading, some is more interactive. Like,
right.
so
Yeah.
they did have
Yeah,
their own
so
spin.
that's exactly what I mean. Like, as long as you stay true to who you are and what your message is, the right people are going to find you, and your message is going to come across to the right person just when they need to hear it. Cuz I know I've heard stuff multiple times, and it's not until someone says it a certain way, or I'm having a certain day, or I'm feeling a certain way, that it hits differently. And
Right.
even sometimes I'll listen to the same podcast twice and I'll get
Right.
something different every time. So it's just
That's
staying,
true. That's true.
you don't necessarily like, I mean, I do like the idea of finding new topics, but you can take the
Yes.
same topics that you've always done and just put a new spin on them. Like,
True.
let's say you start your podcast and you're talking about I don't know, baking. You're talking about baking a pie and you do a recipe on your podcast. And then a year
Yes.
later, you come back and you revisit it and you've made that pie 2 or 3 times. So you have a different tweak on the recipe. And so it's the same recipe, but you're looking at it in a different way and you're going to talk about it in a different way. So
Right.
that would be a tip for me.
Okay. Okay. And I guess when it comes to podcasting, is there any particular platforms or programs that may be better than one another that you would suggest that would be a good idea for like up and coming podcasters to probably use as their platform, like user friendly, easy to use?
So, I record all of my podcasts on Audacity. It's free, and that's if you
Okay.
have a PC. If you have a Mac, there is a program called GarageBand. I don't know much about it because I don't have Mac, but that's also free. If you're looking at doing videos and audio, there's a program called Descript. And Descript, it's really there's a free program that allows you 30 minutes a month. Um, and
Okay.
then it'll take your audio, it'll take your video, and it'll transcribe it for you. They have paid plans as well, but that's a really good one. Um, what's the other one? There's an audiogram one that creates audiograms, but you can do those in Canva. You can put your audio feed into Canva and create audiograms for your social media posts. Um,
That's
as far
awesome.
as yeah, it's a lot of fun. You can get lost in yeah. If your listeners aren't familiar with Canva, be careful. It is
Yes.
a black hole. You can get lost in
Yes.
creating
I love
things.
Canva
Yeah,
though.
I know it's fantastic, but you can get
Yes.
lost. Um, and then as far as a platform goes, that depends. So, some people like Spotify, some people like Buzzsprout, some people like Podbean. It just depends on what you're looking for. Um, I know mine, when I release it in next month, I'll probably be using the Spotify for podcasters just because that's where I listen to podcasts. Um,
Yes.
I used to use Google Podcasts, but I know they're getting rid of it, so I don't know where they're merging into. So I'm going to probably go more with the Spotify, which used to be called Anchor, I believe. Um,
Yes.
if, if you're doing videos, YouTube is a podcast platform now. So you can just transfer all your videos and
Mhm.
audios into YouTube and integrate it that way and have the video and the audio. So it's just
That's
personal preference.
okay. Well, I think all of those are amazing. One of the other things I notice with podcasts is sometimes they are scripted where you can tell somebody's reading off a piece of paper, and then
Mhm,
you can see also the free flowing ones. Just what is your
mhm.
what's your opinion on using either method?
So I think it depends on your comfort level. I think for some people, like for me, a conversation for me is easier than me doing one by myself. So when I do my solo ones, I do like to have something to read from just so I stay on topic because I tend to ramble. Um, so if you're more comfortable with not necessarily reading word for word, but having something in front of you that keeps you on track. So creating an outline or something like that where you know, okay, I'm talking about this point, then that's fine.
Yes.
If you're the type of person who just likes to talk off the cuff and can get to a point really well and can speak really well, then you don't need one. But
Right.
I think for some people, it's just a comfort level thing, just to be able to be like, okay, I'm going to stay on track and this is what I'm going to talk about. And we're not going to
Yes.
veer from it. Yeah.
And I'm cool with free flowing too, but I like
Yeah.
to have my notes. I like to
Yeah.
have some notes.
I'm a notes person. I like my
Yeah.
notes. I like to stay on track. I love free flowing conversation if that's the way it
Yeah.
goes. But if it doesn't, I like to be prepared with something.
That's right. That's right. Always. Um, so when it comes to somebody starting out and they're going to the next level, like there was, I can't remember the name of the podcast. It's a true crime one. It started out with two girls, but anyway,
Oh,
they
girl, I
started
love true
out.
crime.
What is the name? Can't remember the name of it. They started out years ago, but now they're like traveling to different platforms. They're also, you know, having studio sellouts of just their own, where they're both just the two of them on a stage and they're just talking. They just gotten from that level. So at first they were
Hmm.
taking true crime stories, and they went through a little bit of trouble with, they were taking other stories, and everybody could tell it was coming from somewhere else, so that started a
Hmm.
whole thing with them, but they were able to like survive past that. That was just learning curve. They got past that, and then they started having their own platforms where they were able to hire like a marketing team, and I mean it just
Hmm.
grew like drastically. Strategically, how do you know when you're at the point when you can make that move? Like, some people make that move early, too early, trying
Yeah.
to just make sure they have all these followers and all this. And then some people are like, I'm going to wait till I get to a certain point, then jump. What
Hmm.
are your suggestions?
So I think it depends on if that's your goal. So there's some people who use their podcast as what we call nurture for their audience. So, life coaches, business coaches, strategists like us, um, we wouldn't necessarily use the podcast for, to build that kind of a platform. It's more like, hey, I have my clients, let me give them a little bit extra, bonuses with my podcast so they can listen, but there are people out there that want to monetize their podcast. And so I guess it just depends on what your goals are. Again, there's several ways that you can monetize a podcast. You can do private podcasts and sell those if you have a large enough volume, backlog of podcasts. Um, you can use websites like Patreon where you have your free podcasts, and then for, let's say, you have a membership or a club or something like that, then you can have that Patreon feed be specific for those membership, for that membership.
Right.
You can sell swag. I love that word. You can
Yes.
sell merchandise,
Yes.
for your podcast. You can have, there's virtual tip jars now. I saw this the other day.
Oh,
It's like,
wow. That's
I'm like, what's a
different.
virtual tip jar? Yeah, I'm like, what's a virtual tip jar? And I looked into it and I was like, oh, it's like the tip jar you see at the coffee shop where, you can
Right.
put money in. So yeah, so you can do any of those things. Ads are another way as well.
Mhm.
If you're like us and you help, business owners, or, like I help podcasters, the beauty about ads is that we can include our own products within our own podcast, and
That's
that's free
right.
to us. That's free
Yes.
to us. So,
Yes.
yeah. So it's like great, but you can, if you don't do that, like let's say you do have a true crime podcast and you want to do ads, you can have ads for other things into your show. And, you
Yes.
know, there's multiple ways of doing it. You just have to know the reason behind why you're doing it and
That's
understand that
right.
podcasting isn't something that's going to go viral overnight. It takes a long time.
It
It is
does.
a
It
long
does.
process.
Yes. Yes.
So
Very
have the
long.
patience, know what you want to accomplish, and then go from there.
That's right. Okay. Well, tell us a little bit about top shelf virtual services and what kind of like services you provide to individuals as far as when they're trying to do you start with brand new or more seasoned podcasters? Like just give us an overall of what you do.
Okay. So I do both. I can help launch a podcast. So I have strategy calls that I do. Um, and then I also help seasoned podcasters. I have podcast audits that I do. I also have where I meet with them every quarter and we do a goal setting at the beginning. And then I meet with them at the end of the quarter to see how the quarter went goal wise. Um, I also do relaunches. So if you have a podcast and you're kind of stuck and you're like, it's not going anywhere, um,
Yes.
I provide those services. And a lot of what I do is mindset centered. So I talk a lot about burnout, preventing burnout, making sure that you're not overwhelmed with all the information and everything that you have to do, setting time up for yourself, including your family if you have a family. So making sure that your family knows, okay, this time block here is for recording. Like right now, I'm in my makeshift office. My son tried to come in before we started, and I was like, no, the door is
Yes.
closed. You can't come in. I'll see you in about an hour. So just
Yes.
letting everyone in your life know, what you're doing, and then make sure that you're not trying to take on too much. So
Mhm.
if your energy or yourself only allows for an hour, be aware of that. Be aware that you
Yes.
only have an hour to do this work. So what can you get done in that hour? And then
That's
don't
right.
feel bad when you have to do more than one day to get it done. Don't feel bad. Give yourself some
Yes.
grace. Give yourself some patience. So
I love
that's
that.
that's what I do.
And I think a lot of with the podcast is like, even with me just talking about it or just posting about it, there was a lot of response and it just can get,
Mhm.
it can get overwhelming when you're like, whoa, okay, thought one or two, like, and it just
Yeah.
changes things. How do you keep that balance that, because you have your day-to-day life going on, you have um, your own businesses, whether it be one or two or three or four, you have all this going on. Podcasting can be very intense. There's like so many different processes prior to you launching.
Mhm.
So to avoid the burnout and getting overwhelmed,
Mhm.
what is your best advice that you would give someone if they're just trying to launch? Like what
Yeah.
is
So give yourself, so one of the things I hear a lot is people out there saying you can launch in a weekend. No, you cannot
no,
launch in a weekend. You
no,
cannot launch in a weekend.
no.
Um, there's platforms that take, I know iTunes, the last time I checked, it took almost 3 weeks for someone to get accepted into iTunes. So no,
Mhm.
you cannot do it in a weekend. You can prepare and have
Yes.
all of your background work done and be on all
Yes.
the platforms and have everything recorded and do all of that, and then publish it and be out in a weekend. Yes, that you can do, but
That's
that's
right.
not the background work. That's not what you're doing on the background. So for
That's right.
me, what I would say is time block. Give yourself, so when I help my clients launch, I have a guide that helps you launch in 8 weeks. And every week there is a specific topic that you're doing and a specific set of tasks that you're doing every week to get you to that launch,
Yes.
because you have to make sure the foundation is right. Otherwise, you're going to get out there, you're going to put your episodes, and then you're going to get stuck because you're not going to know what you're doing, how you're doing it, how it's working, why it's working,
Right.
what's not working, so you're going to be lost. So that would be my thing. Give yourself the time. Now,
Yes.
I don't mean have it take you 6 months or a year to plan it. Don't over
Yes.
plan. But if anybody tells you that you can do this in a day, 24 hours, 48 hours,
No.
no. No.
Absolutely not.
That's not true.
No.
That's not true.
No.
It's not true.
And I've seen them. You see the little ads. Get yourself started in as little as one day, 48 hours, or you see it pop
Yeah.
up all over social media. No.
No, because when you start looking at it and you start, even just, you could have your topic, you could have your stuff
Mhm.
recorded in a day, you can have all of those things, your mic, your headphones, you can have it edited. I mean, editing one episode, if you've never done it before, you can be doing that for 3 or 4 hours.
Yes.
It takes time.
Yes.
And, but even, let's not talk about any of that stuff. Just talking about getting on the platforms to be
Mhm.
accepted, to be able to publish your podcast on the different platforms, that takes time.
It
That's not a
does.
24-hour turnaround.
Not at all. No.
So
No.
I'll get off my soapbox now.
No. But it's so true because everybody just thinks like, even when it comes to building a business, when
Yeah.
when I built up my nonprofit to get where I am now, and it's kind of like, you guys, this has been 2 years, 3 years in the process. Like, this is
Mhm.
not a fly by night.
Yeah.
You know, Even when I started working on TV1's Fatal Attraction, it was like everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, like you did this and da da da." I'm like, but how long have I been in the forensics field to get here? Like, this was not just a
Yeah.
phone call and this is somebody doing research on me and finding me after years. They're not going to
Mhm.
just put anybody there. So, I mean, I think that there is that misconception where everybody's like, oh, I saw this, that I can get rich off a podcast in 72 hours. Like,
Yeah,
and
no.
it's a gimmick that people are selling,
Yeah.
and people are so busy trying to get things done so quick
Mhm.
that they don't take the time. And even if you have somebody else behind the scenes working on everything,
Mhm.
if you outsource to Fiverr, you're still not getting it back.
In 24 hours. You're not.
No, and you have to provide some sort of strategic plan to them so that they know what it is you want. And they're not just going to create something, they're going to take what you have
Mhm.
and create from that. So you
Right.
still have to do that back work. It's still got
Yeah.
to be done.
And it may not be done to the way you want it, so you have to redo it yourself.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
yeah,
I've
like
had to do that too.
I've never been a big fan of the get rich quick or the do it quick kind of thing, the microwave mentality. Um
Yes.
I think everything that's worth, like you said you did forensics. I worked as a paralegal for well over 20 years. And I don't do that anymore, but those 20 years gave me a lot of knowledge of, criminal background and family and, family law and
Mhm.
probate law and, all that stuff that had
Yes.
I just walked in from the door, I didn't have that. I didn't
Right.
have that expertise. I didn't have that information. And
Right.
so I think the time invested that we put into things and the things that we learn, the mistakes that you make
Right.
are how you learn. Like, yeah,
That's
you may launch a podcast and the first 5 episodes may not go anywhere.
that's
The
right.
first year may not.
Yes.
Like
That's right.
I was talking to somebody the other day, and her podcast has been around for 3 or 4 years. And she was trying to figure out why it hadn't gone anywhere.
Right.
And our conversation was simple as, "Hey, are you doing SEO in the title of your podcast and the title of your episodes?" And she said, "Well, no, I didn't think about it." And I said, "Well, they're
Right.
searchable now." So simple things like that, if you do something in 24, 48 hours, you're not going to think about those things because you're
No.
trying to get it out as soon as you can.
That's
And it's
right.
almost like you're half-assing it
Yes. Yes.
and you're not
Yes.
really going to get anywhere. Like,
No.
you have to put forth the effort if you want
You
to get
have
the
to.
results.
That's
You have
right. You
to.
have to. Everybody think, not everybody, but there are people that think if I just do this, it's gonna boom overnight. And
No.
that may be the success story for some, but that's
If you're made
people
of
don't
money.
understand. That's right.
Yeah.
That's
If
right.
if you're already a viral
That's
star,
right.
if you're already an influencer, if you're already, someone in Hollywood, a sports,
Right.
sports person, if you're already in the public eye, yeah, absolutely. You can do it in
That's
24 to
right.
48 hours. But those of us regular folks who are just trying to make it and, do our own thing, it's not going to work that way.
No.
That's not how it's going to work for us. We don't have that. I don't want to. Oh, what's the word? We don't have that privilege. Let me just say that word. Let me just say it.
No, not
We
at
don't have
all.
that. We don't have that.
Not at all. Not at all. And the basis of this podcast is, of course, the genius mindset. So it's, at what point or transition in your life did you have that aha moment where you're like, I've got a plan and I can help,
Mhm.
millions of people with this, and I can change lives. I can impact. I can make a difference from just your normal day to day. Like, what was that shift like for you?
That's a really good question. I don't think I'm at that shift yet. I think I'm still learning it. It's like a constant
Yes,
thing. I'm
it
one of
is.
those people was a type A, super like got to get it done, got to get it done, got to get it done. And it's in the last year and a half that I've kind of stepped back and been like, how can I serve? How can I help?
Yes,
Who can I
yes.
help? And I
That's
know
right.
as women we tend to have a lot of that. I'm not good enough, I'm not doing enough. And so just kind of sitting in my own self and realizing that I don't have to do anything. I don't have to be anything. I
That's right.
am enough just as I am. And as
That's
long
right.
as I'm willing to provide that service and help someone get their voice out there and shed those fears that they have that they don't have anything to say, then I'm doing my job at the end of the day. So it's a long process and it's still going, but every time I'm able to have someone have their aha moment like, "Oh my gosh, I never thought about that."
That's
Or,
right. I love
"Wow,
it.
that's like I was helping a client of mine. She had only been on one platform on the podcast and she couldn't figure out how to get on the other ones. And it was like a quick
Hmm.
2-minute thing of showing her how to put the RSS feed into all the different platforms. And
Yes.
within 20 minutes, she was everywhere.
Yes.
So, like, that's very simple. But I was able to help someone get over a hurdle that
Right.
they were having trouble with. So that's been my crowning glory, I guess, just being able to be
Yes.
of service.
But even though it could be something like so simple, it's the impact.
Mhm.
You could change her into a global household name just by showing her those simple things, just those simple things. And she, you know, what may have seemed small to you was huge to her. I
Mhm.
bet she was like so happy that now I'm like, I'm on all of these platforms and
Mhm.
now I can reach more people. And, it's just one little thing, one little gesture can change everything.
Yep.
And that's the way I go into my nonprofit and my business, even though I might not be able to, on the forensic side, save every cold case. If I
Mhm.
can find a tip for one, then job well done. That's,
Yeah.
I did it. I used to stress and try to fix all, but then, quickly I learned in business that that's just not going to happen. You're
No,
not
no,
going to
you
please
gotta look at
everyone.
the little. Yeah. Yeah, you gotta celebrate the little wins because
That's right.
if you look at the big ones, they're gonna be few and far between and you're gonna burn yourself out. Whereas if you look at the smaller victories, you're gonna have a lot
That's
more of
right.
those getting to the big goal. And that's how you avoid burning out, is just celebrating
Yes,
the little things.
absolutely. And so, as we're wrapping up, I think one of the things that I want you to be able to do is tell everybody how they can find you
Mhm.
and how they can get the services that you provide, which I think are amazing.
Sure. So everything is on my website. So it's www.topshelfvirtualservices.com. And then I am on Instagram. I am Aeoliana.Elliott. So it's Elliott. And I'm also on TikTok. That is Aeoliana underscore podcast strategy. And I have a Facebook group. It's called Podcast Strategy with Heart. You can search for it and find me there. Um, and on my website, you can sign up for my newsletter. And I have a blog. It's all on my website. I have everything on my website. Ways you can work with
So,
me. I have free worksheets and downloads in resources in there. I'm going to be putting a couple of my courses in there as well. I just haven't gone in there yet to do that, but I'm going to be putting some of my courses in there. And yeah, so that's where you can find me on all the things. Find me on Insta, find me on TikTok, comment, say hello. I love interacting with people. It's my thing. You'll see a lot of pictures of my son playing hockey because that's kind of my life.
yes,
And yeah, yeah, yeah,
I get
if
it. I have kids too.
or like if you know me for 5 minutes, like that is our life.
Yes.
So yeah, that is where you can find me.
All right. Well, it has been a pleasure having you on this show. I
Thank you.
myself have learned so many amazing things about podcasting in general and different aspects that I probably wouldn't have even thought of. So
And
I think it will definitely help all of those that are watching the Genius Mindset to learn more about how you can be an asset to them, when it comes to their podcasting and how to develop it and strategically have it take off. So I think this has been amazing. So excited about you being a part of this February launch. And thank you so much for being on this show today.
thank you for having me. This was a pleasure.
Thank you so much.